Welcome to Seriously Uncork Yourself. I am your host, Lynn Kuhn, and this is a podcast that brings to you a firsthand look at what it seriously means to meet people where they are in their life. Enjoy the experience from illusions to reality. Find out what it is to restore to high performance, renew your freedoms, and rejuvenate playfulness. I can't wait to share with you my experience and the experiences of many others in hopes that you feel inspired to renew yourself and live your best life. Thanks for listening. Now let's get started. Today, I am so very excited and honored to have my special guest, James Paulus, here with me on my new podcast, Seriously Uncork Yourself. And Jim, I really do appreciate you coming today, taking that time out of your busy schedule. And I'm so excited that you are here.
Lynn, well, first, I just want to tell you thank you for putting together this platform and this podcast. There's a lot that goes into producing these things. And so I just want to thank you for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to share my vision for what I do and for how I want to impact the people around me in a positive way. So this is great. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. And just a little bit about James, and I'm going to let him talk about himself also. But he is a practitioner and advocate for healthy living for over 30 years. Coach James Paulus is on a mission to inspire and lead the willing toward better health and happiness. Coach Paulus is a graduate of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and completed his national board certification for health and wellness coaching in July of 2019. He is one of approximately 3,500 health coaches in the United States. And he's also recognized by the National Board of Medical Examiners and leading healthcare insurance providers. How cool is that? That is really awesome because not too many people get that credit to be able to do that. Coach Paulus also offers his coaching services nationwide via innovative, easy to access telehealth platform. Coach Paulus believes the journey to optimal health begins by achieving and maintaining a healthy weight and offers medically approved programs proven to produce safe and predictable weight loss. And that is absolutely phenomenal. And I would love for you to tell our audience just a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you, Lynn. And thank you for that introduction. So basically, health has always been something that I've been interested in. And my interest originated from watching my mom when I was a kid help other people. She was back in the days in the 70s, Neolife was a nutrition company, and she became a distributor for Neolife. And through that business, I watched her help people transform their health. And I specifically, something that stood out was one of my cousins that she helped. And just to see the change in their health. So it fascinated me that, as a kid, your awareness of like cause and effect isn't too great, right? Except for when you like fall down or something. But the fact that what you put in your mouth and what you provide your body through our food and through nutrition can change the outcome and shift our health. And I just thought that, hey, that's really cool. And the part that interested me most was, well, if I could change my body. See, when I was little, I was kind of a runt. I was born really small. I was really the smallest kid. I was the kid on the bench all the time in sports, and I wasn't very athletic. I was a skinny little guy. And so I wanted to be a big bodybuilder, because to me that meant like, girls would like me and I would be strong and powerful, right? And so I pursued health and wellness. The knowledge to transform my body was my initial catalyst to dive into nutrition and the biochemistry of the body. And that's how I got started. And as time goes by, life pulls us in a lot of different directions. And I originally set out to be a doctor in college. I wanted to be not an MD, but a DO. And I wanted to be a holistic type of doctor. And I wanted to be able to prescribe when necessary, but also use natural remedies and a holistic approach to wellness. And that didn't work out. I didn't get into medical school, but life throws different curveballs at you, and I went a different direction. And I'm actually really glad I did, because now what I do is completely doesn't involve, the headache of insurance and the red tape and the bureaucracy of the medical establishment as far as medicine goes. And I think I would have probably burnt, a lot of doctors burn out. They work, long hours. And so now I get to work with people to really make a positive impact, because it all comes back to lifestyle. It all comes back to the daily choices that we make, and being able to recognize when we're on a path, or we've developed habits that are bad and that are leading us down a road of self-destruction and illness, versus making forming good habits, and going down the path of health and wellness and longevity and thriving. And so what led me to coaching was my father got cancer, and here I was with 25, 30 years of self-study and knowledge about wellness and nutrition. And I had no way. I mean, I would tell him what to do, and he'd do it for a couple of days and he'd stop. And so I had this brain full of knowledge, and no way to transfer. How do I impact others with my knowledge? So watching my dad go through cancer, 3 years chemotherapy, and finally passing away, that was about 7 years ago. That frustration of not being able to help him, I set out to figure out, well, how do I work with people in a way where I can take this knowledge that I have, which is great for me. I mean, I apply it to myself all day long, and I feel great at 51. I feel fantastic. I have the same body I had when I was about 20, 21, and my energy's good. My mental clarity is good. I feel great, but I don't, and that's great for me. But, as you well know, our happiness, our joy, and our content really begins to explode. And when we learn that life is about really helping other people, and about, people are going to remember you at your funeral. They're going to remember you for what you gave, and not for what you took or what you have or what you got, but what you gave to other people. And so I decided to go to coaching school, and that's when I attended IIN, or the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, for a year, and went through their course. I didn't want to go through some rinky-dinky 3-day or 1-week course. I signed up for the best course that I could find that was really it dove into a lot of different areas, and there was substance to it. It was a 1-year course. Got my certification, and then 2 years later, the National Board of Medical Examiners, which is the same body, the National Board of Medical Examiners, the NBME, they've been around for over 100 years. They're the same body that board certifies. They create the standardized tests to board certify physicians. Well, the National Board of Certification for Health and Wellness Coaching, NBCHWC, they basically partnered with the Medical Examiners Board, and they created a standardized test for health coaching to establish a baseline of knowledge that you have to be able to coach people. And so I sat for my national board exam in July of 2019, and
19,
yeah. And so I got my national board certification, one of the only 3,500 coaches so far. And that's the new standard for health and wellness coaches. And now insurance companies are actually bringing board certified health and wellness coaches on board to work with their client base, because what we know is when you help a person change their lifestyle, it changes their health outcomes. Right. So,
right.
So that's maybe that was long-winded, but that's a little bit about my history.
Oh,
I live in Fort Myers. I have a beautiful wife of 30 years and 2 beautiful children, actually in Austin, and they're in their late 20s and thriving. And so I have many blessings, and my mission is to pay it forward, help other people, to transform their lives, starting with their health. And then, because your health, if you don't have good health, one of your themes for your shows is freedom, renewing your freedoms. And,
Mhm.
without good health, you're really trapped by it. It traps you because it limits your ability to do things, whether, depending on what the health condition is. And if it's bad enough, it completely debilitates you. And, they say, Virgil says, health is the greatest wealth, because without our health, all the money in the bank doesn't matter. I mean, look at Steve Jobs with his pancreatic cancer, billionaire.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so my mission is to help people change the course of their habits and their behaviors so that they can get on track, live their best life. And I just love it. I love waking up every morning to thinking about who can I help next.
Yeah, and that is just so important, because I know even what I've gone through this last like almost 2 years now, and I had, I thought I was doing the best that I possibly could for, making sure that I stayed at my job, and I chose to have surgery done, and that surgery went completely the wrong way that it was supposed to, and left me with a lot of problems. And now I'm getting through that, because I have one surgery left me with almost 6 to fix the one that they sort of didn't do a very good job at.
Yeah.
So if you don't have your health, and I, even through my coaching program that I attended, the gentleman that was teaching us, he said that if there's one thing that all of you get out of all this, and may that be the most important thing, is if you have to take the whole year, not to build your business, but to make sure that your health is in check. That's your number one thing. And that really resonated with me. And so that's why, like when things didn't go the way they were supposed to, that was my main objective, that, I had to just do whatever I needed to do to get my health back, because I want to have some good quality years, especially with, our family, and it doesn't stop growing. It's just getting bigger and bigger as we speak here. And so, and I want to spend that time, with our family. So I think that is so important. But what I love right now too, that I love for James to talk about, is the name of our podcast is Being Healthy Doesn't Have to Be Hard. And I think that a lot of people believe that getting healthy is hard. And so I'm going to let you take this away, because I have to agree with you that it's not as hard as people think. If you, in my opinion, is you take it and you little pieces and the process to it. But I'm gonna let you go ahead and explain to our audiences, how can you become healthy without it being so hard?
So let's focus on the word hard real quick. So
Okay.
it's almost like we have to choose our hard. Okay. Anything of value or worthwhile generally doesn't just fall in our laps. Okay.
So true.
And so getting healthy does require effort. It requires work. It requires discipline. And all things that require like order require discipline. And what the hardest part about getting healthy, there's a number of things, but the hardest, there's a number, and it's all really an attitude too, how you look at it. It's hard to be sick. I think it's harder to be sick than it is to be healthy. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
and you can relate to that, Lynn, with the situation, your medical conditions that you're going through, and the unexpected ones. And how hard has that been? The shifts that you have to make, the things that you can't do, and so become your obstacles. And so you got to really, in this life, you got to really choose your obstacles. And because no matter what, there's always going to be a challenge. And if being healthy means that your challenge is choosing between cheesecake and or a really healthy, beautiful looking salad with lots of greens and veggies on it and some lean protein on it, that's your hard. Then, I mean, you got to pick versus, can I get up and walk? Am I going to have somebody come and help me a few hours every day to get ready? Am I going to am I going to transfer my heart to my family when I drop dead from a heart attack? You know, will my wife be able to carry the load and burden of our family financially, and the responsibilities if I, as a middle-aged man, drop dead from a heart attack because I couldn't say no to a 24-ounce porterhouse once a week with whatever else I stacked on top of that on a daily basis, right? So, you know, we have to choose our hearts, and being healthy doesn't have to be hard, because just like anything, if you take, look, for example, climbing Mount Everest. Well, nobody runs up Mount Everest. There's base camps, right? They hike to a base camp, they check, they rest for a while and regroup and renourish, and then they pack back up and they go up to the next base camp. So big things are accomplished in small steps, and changing habits, because it's our daily routine. Let's go from focusing on the word hard to the word habits. We're covering all the H's today. So habits are what we do on a continuous basis. They're what we do consistently and generally without thinking about it. Okay. They're ingrained patterns that we formed because, well, we've just been practicing them. And some habits get formed when we are triggered by something. There's a cue, and then there's some routine that we do. And then after that routine is done, that action that has been taken, there's a reward somehow at the end. And so your brain tunes into that pattern of cue, stimulus, behavior, reward. And anything that follows that type of pattern will get recorded kind of in our GPS in the brain. It's called the amygdala, and it's kind of where we store our patterns. And those patterns begin to develop at a very young age. So we are definitely creatures of habit. In order to break those patterns, it requires discipline, it requires structure, it requires mindfulness. And that's what I help my clients to do. To identify their goals, what they want to accomplish, the different outcomes that they want in their lives. If the current outcome is they have a high A1C and they're 50 pounds overweight, and they're tired, they're grumpy, they're moody, their relationships aren't going well, because when you feel like garbage, you tend to treat other people not so well, right? And so
this is true. Yes.
Yeah. And so what happens is we look at the Mount Everests that are out there in your life, and we say, okay, well, let's break it down into base camps, into small digestible chunks. And let's, if this is the outcome we want, what are the actions that lead to that outcome? And yeah, could people do this by themselves? Sure. It's not a rocket scientist project. It's not a complicated process. But what we find is we tend to, just like, here's an example. If your alignment in your car is off, right? Let's say it pulls to the right. And that's like a bad habit that we have. If we take our hand off the wheel, if we stop thinking and we take our hand off the wheel, the car, our life kind of pulls to the right or to the left or whatever, off the road, basically. Okay. And so what we have to do to change that pull, that habits like that pull, that bad alignment, we have to put our hands on the wheel, and we have to grab it, and we have to be mindful and attentive, and we have to take control of the steering wheel, and we have to keep our hand. We can't let go of the wheel. Letting go of the wheel is synonymous to stop thinking about it, right? Stop focusing on what it is that you want, and just kind of going through life in zombie mode and just reacting to life. So I teach my clients how to grab the wheel and to steer, and eventually we give them a brake job and an alignment, and the car doesn't pull to the right anymore. So our program, is like fixing that bad alignment that we have, and helping us to get back on the road and driving in the direction that we want to go. So many of us have grown up through our lives reacting to everything around us, and we end up becoming this accumulation of random decisions that we really didn't choose, as much as if we just picked a goal, picked an outcome that we wanted, made a plan. Saying all that requires, the mindfulness and using your advanced part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that's behind your forehead. That's the part of our brain where we store our goals, our values, and it's where we bounce up against. If I do this, what could possibly go wrong? And it's the front of your brain. And if you know anything about ADD, there's 7 forms of ADD that's been identified. And the primary, most basic form of ADD is when the prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain, doesn't get innervated or doesn't have a lot of blood circulation. And so that part of the brain is kind of like the lights are dim. And so that's why people who do have standard ADD tend to make poor decisions, because they're reacting and they're going on autopilot and not bouncing their choices up against their values, their goals, and the things that are important to them. And they're not weighing outcomes. They're not saying, okay, if I do this, what could go right? What could go wrong? They're not processing those types of, and that takes energy. That takes energy in the brain, right? And so I help my clients to light that part of the brain up, to nourish and fuel it, to define their goals, and then to create a path to make those goals a reality for them.
That's really awesome.
That was long-winded.
No, you're fine. I love it. I'm very, I'm trying to put this all together, because I'm thinking, okay, so if I'm a client of yours and I want to lose weight, you're going to actually tell me or give me a path that I'm going to follow per se, right? You're going to give me that path, and you're going to give me where I'm going to make good choices compared to not making. And so what I'm hearing is, now you're going to help me with my mindset, because I truly believe that when trying to become healthy, a lot of times, like you said, with the analogy of the steering wheel being out of a line, I think that so many times when that we do get out of the line and we don't get that alignment back into place, it's easier just to leave it out of a line, because once again, now your habits are starting to diminish, the good habits that you're trying to replace these bad habits with. Am I on the right path?
Yeah, it's kind of like, have you ever been down an old country road that's been driven down like thousands of times, and there's like a path that's already been carved, and the wheels kind of just follow that path. Well, that's like our habits. And so to try to break out of that, you've got to really like jerk the wheel and turn it, and so that you can go off the path, right? And so that's why, or with the alignment analogy, it gets tiresome to always have to have your hand on those wheels, and especially if the pull is really bad, right? If your habits are really, really bad and really ingrained, it's hard to pull. Imagine the wheel being so difficult to turn. And so you could get tired, right? You burn out. So we have to tap into the parts of the brain that store what's important to us, our values. When health becomes, when you internalize what health means to you. So one of the first components that we cover in our program is, why do you want to be healthy? Having a really powerful why is so critical, because it's, they say, and a lot of people say, well, what does that mean? What is a why? Well, what's important to you is your why. What are you living for? And, how do you write a powerful why? And that's something we cover in element 1 of our program. We have a program that's actually called The Habits of Health, that I didn't write it, but it's so brilliant. A lot of health coaches will graduate and they'll start writing up their own materials. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I found a program that has right now, I think it's going on a 20-year history. And it's in its 2nd edition, and there's a workbook and a textbook, and it's my clients have the opportunity to kind of attend Health 101, and the life book is what helps them become more mindful and get awareness of where they are and what's possible. And it's really meant to be gone through over a period of 365 days, a year, 1 year. It's not something you just blaze through. And you go through that life book and you digest a little bit of, just like that mountain you're climbing. And in that life book, that's what transforms the thinking. See, the body follows the mind. The mind is the master computer. And, you know, unless we change the program, when we boot up in the morning, we're going to run the same program every day. And when we boot down and we boot back up in the morning, every time you wake up and open your eyes, it's like you turning your computer on and Windows operating system pops up. Well, your operating system pops up. And so what we have to learn how to do is, how do we reprogram our own operating system? And that's what our course and the materials that I use for my coaching program do. So we kind of attack it from both. We approach it from two angles. One, we implement small steps that someone can practice each day, and one or two, maximum 3 things to do each day, no more than 3. Practice those 3 things. That could be like making sure you drink 64 ounces of water a day, like have a cup of water every hour or 2, having a small meal every 2 to 3 hours, learning to plan your meals ahead of time, because when we don't plan, when we fail to plan, we plan to fail. You've heard that before. And so the program starts people off with practicing a couple healthy activities, right? And then while they're doing that, they say, if you can do something for 66 days uninterrupted, that's what starts to form the new tracks in the road. It starts to fix the alignment in the car, is when we practice something uninterrupted for 66 days with no more than 1 to 2 days interruption max. If you have 1 or 2 days, if you fall off the wagon, so to speak, for more than 3 days, you start that 66-day count over again. And if you can be consistent for 66 days, the geniuses who study brain psychology and the brain, that's what they say the minimum is about 66 days, the average. And if you're very emotional about the change, if your why makes you cry, you've heard that before. If your why makes you cry, you're really passionate about it, you really mean something to you, you can change your habits faster, because the brain responds to that emotional impact, that stimulus. Just like a traumatic experience can lay down immediate memories. Well, positive emotions and having something that seriously just means the world to you, that you wake up and that's what you're about, that can help you shift your habits even faster. So that's why it's so important to decide, what is my why? When I die, what do I want people, what is my obituary going to say? If you want to write a powerful why, write your obituary. Write your obituary. And
that's true.
Yeah. And that's going to reveal to you what is important to you. And if you haven't thought about it, and a lot of people I talk to, when we first start working on this, they haven't really thought about it. Everybody's waking up, going through the motions of the day, Netflix at night or whatever, and they're doing it all over again. And, 30 years pass by, 40, 50 pounds get piled on. And we're at the cardiologist, getting, our blood pressure and cholesterol meds. And so, my mission is to help people to take the reins back. And it's not hard. It just requires steps, baby steps, and some clarity of where am I going? Like, where do I want to go and why? And having that clarity of mind, and then you just slowly implement it into your life. And then that's how we turn the Titanic around. So.
Right. And I think this is absolutely wonderful, because this brings back, even like with my personal story of being in recovery. And what you're saying is exactly what I had to do for my brain to understand, to stay away from the bad things in my life, and it doesn't happen overnight. But yet once you figure out what your why is and how passionate you are with your why, and mine was probably a little bit easier being in recovery than with food. Two things, like, because when I was in a rehab center, and they had, you had your addictions, and then you had your process addictions. And of course, somebody that has bulimia or anorexia, that's considered a process addiction. And I always said that, me, mine was alcohol. So me to put that aside is so much easier per se than a person that has to eat to live. I don't need alcohol to live.
Right.
And so I always thought that was pretty amazing. And so when you're saying with the process of all this, and that's exactly, of course, once again, you're teaching somebody, how to live healthy. And I mean, mine was a little bit easier, I say, because I went in with, it was either I'm going to live or I'm going to die. And I
Right.
had to make a
You
choice.
had a fork in the road.
Yeah, because it was
Yeah.
like, I can't live like this anymore. So it was a little bit easier, but it's still a process, and it's an ongoing process. And it's like something that you have to, continue every single day. And it has to be, and it never gets easier, but it doesn't sometimes get harder. It has to just be a continuous. And it's the same thing, I believe, with your health, and like you said, it's like once you can retrain that brain,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, and learn how to focus on what you actually need to do and take it little bits. I think that is really important. And I just love everything that you said. So with with you going, through your certifications and such, you actually help people with not just only they're learning how to lose a couple of pounds. You're actually teaching them how to get healthy and to restructure their life so that they can move forward. And each day that they move forward, they're that much closer to being, healthy where they need to be. Correct?
Yeah. It's kind of like being a computer programmer, but
Mm-hmm.
teaching people how to be their own programmer for their lives. Like once
Mm-hmm.
you learn how to program yourself and so between our ears, we all have this amazing supercomputer. Okay.
Yep.
And it's been being programmed. When we were kids, it got programmed by our circumstances around us, right? And some of
Mm-hmm.
those were good, and some of those were bad. Some of those were really bad. And so our brain, our little computer there, was absorbing up all this programming
Mm-hmm.
without a filter. And see, that's the problem when, from age 0 to 7, you don't have that adult filter that says, you know what, that I don't want to be a part of that. That I'm going to chop that out of my life. When you're 0 to 7, you don't have that choice, and you just absorb it all, and you internalize a lot of it, and you think, well, something must be wrong with me. And so, we get all, and then that 7 years of programming kind of perpetuates itself for the next, I don't know, let's say, when does the midlife crisis happen? Like 45,
50s,
40,
yeah.
45.
There, yeah.
So we kind of perpetuate that first 7 years of programming, and it just feeds on itself, and a program is kind of like a track in the road. It's it's a habit, right? And so we keep repeating the program. Every time we repeat a routine, it's like think of like keying a car. You put a scratch in it, and then when we repeat the routine, it's like keying that same mark over and over again before you know it, you key that same spot long enough, it's a deep groove, right? And those deep grooves are our habits, the ones that we don't even know. See, before, when we're from age 0 to 7, we don't know language, right? We haven't learned language yet. So we're soaking up patterns. Our brain is looking and hearing and seeing patterns. And before we even know how to assign words to it, that's why a lot of times people have a very difficult time assigning how they feel to words, because, and why we are emotional creatures, and a lot of our patterns are emotionally driven, and sometimes we can't explain them because they were formed. Those grooves were formed before we even started to form language or words to attach to emotions. One of the most beautiful exercises that is available in the materials that I have is going through how am I feeling, like identifying how I'm feeling with actual words, like stopping for a minute and saying, and feeling, letting your body feel the emotion, whatever it is, and then identifying that emotion. And then everything kind of falls back to some root 4 or 5 core emotions, like fear, safety, love. There's some core emotions that everything, there's like, I don't know, 50 different words to describe emotions, but they all stem back to about 4 or 5 core emotions. Like, am I safe? Like, what are your survival emotions? Safety and security is one of them. And so learning to identify how we're feeling, and assigning language to that. But basically we pick all that stuff up, and that's the programming that, you know, you learn to identify what program am I executing, and okay, now how do I change that program? And so I equip my clients with the ability to stop, challenge what they're about to do, challenge the program that's about to run, and then choose. And when you stop, pause, challenge, what am I about to do, and why, how am I feeling, and then choose. And when we choose, we can say, instead of choosing something that perpetuates that cycle that we just interrupted, we have a choice in the choice side on the stop, challenge, choose, in the choose section to say, how do I want to feel? What outcome do I want? And is that choice that I'm about to make going to produce that outcome? Okay, that activity, that action, that routine that I'm about to do. So what actually happens there when we stop before we do something, when we stop and we put a pause, a gap, in that gap, you know what happens? Our prefrontal cortex of our brain fires up. That front of your brain behind your forehead there, we give it a chance to kick in. And when we give our prefrontal cortex a chance to kick in, we can bounce our choice up against our values, our goals. If we don't stop, if we're feeling a certain way and then we go through the routine, we've never stopped and challenged it. We never turned the lights on in the prefrontal cortex to say, do I really want to do this? Is this the outcome? Do I want the outcome this is going to produce? And listen, it's a constant process, learning to turn the lights on before you stumble through the room. Okay. And so stop, challenge, choose is a cognitive tool that we use in our program to help people break those chains, I call them chains, because when a pattern keeps you stuck and going, producing an outcome that's undesirable, those are chains. And so how do we break those chains? Well, we have to interrupt the process. And so stop, challenge, choose is a simple thing that you can use. And anybody listening, you could use that right now. So practice, and it does take practice to use it because we're used to running on autopilot, you know? So being mindful, kicking in, stop, challenge, choose, just that alone right there can begin to make changes, can begin to carve a new path. You know, the end goal is teaching people how to rewrite their story, and rewriting your story is equal to reprogramming your brain. Rewriting your story is like reprogramming your brain.
I
Different
just
ways
love
of saying the same thing.
Yeah, and all these are just, to me, it's just, this is just really some really good information that you've shared with us. So what I'd love for you to do, James, is just go ahead and tell the audience, how can they get a hold of you if they want to learn more on what you're doing?
So because we have an epidemic of weight, excess weight in this country, a lot of people will begin to engage me as far as making changes in their lives. We'll start it with weight loss. And sometimes that's all people need, right? And that's great because they know that even a 10% reduction in weight can have dramatic positive impact on so many areas of our health. Okay. And so it's my hope that I benefit everyone I interact with in a positive way, whether it's through a one-on-one coaching interaction or whether it's just you following me on social media and seeing the positive posts that I make, and if a positive post motivates you to take action, to me, that's joy in my life, that I had a ability to positively impact the world around me. So you can find me on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/coach James Paulus, CoachJamesPaulus, all together, Coach James Paulus, or on Instagram at Coach James Paulus, same thing, COACH, James Paulus, JAMES PAULUS on Instagram. Follow me there. If you'd like to learn more or reach out, learn about my predictable weight loss program, you can also text the word weight loss to 239-872-7216, and I will respond back, and we can have a conversation about what is important to you, because that's what's important to you is what is important to me as a coach. So love you guys. And Lynn, it's been awesome to be on with you. So this is great. So I appreciate being able to get the word out and tell people what I'm all about. So I appreciate it.
And this time, the short time that we had together was absolutely phenomenal. And I'm listening myself and learning from just listening too. I just enjoy it. That's why I enjoy doing these podcasts. So it's information out there for other people to go ahead and listen to. And I'm always benefiting from them too. I think it's just awesome. But yeah, and then everything that James said, how to get a hold of him, I'll have for everybody underneath in my show notes in case you didn't, you missed, how he spelled something or whatever. It's going to be there for you guys to go ahead and get his phone number. And so you don't have to worry about if you missed it right now, trying to write it down. It'll be underneath for you guys to go ahead and get a hold of James. And I am just so excited that we got to do this today, and you're going to have to come back. We're going to have to learn some more.
Oh, there's so much that we can cover. So we got an endless supply of topics.
It sounds wonderful to me. I would just love to have you back on the show. Awesome. And thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Lynn. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen. God bless.
Yeah. God bless. Thank you for tuning into the show. I hope this brought out your passions, ignited you, and inspired you to restart and reclaim your life. Please subscribe to my podcast and feel free to leave a rating and a review. Until the next episode of Seriously Uncork Yourself, you can check out more information at lynnkuhn.com. That's Lynn, L-Y-N-N, Kuhn, Kuhn.com. Be sure to tune in for my next episode. Sending you all peace and love until our next time together. Seriously Uncork Yourself.